In this video, I'm going to do a comparison between Divi 5 and Etch. Now, before we even get started, this is not a this page builder is better than this one, because I know the page builder topic can be very, very sensitive. So I have no time to go into back and forths and arguments and debates. I want peace always. Okay. Anyway, so let's dive in and let's take a look and see how Divi 5 does its thing and how Etch approaches its web design process. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to start with blank pages. So in here, in Divi, if you want to add some modules, you click here on this plus button here to add your row like that. And then you decide what you want to add in the row. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a heading like that. And we're also going to add a paragraph text. So we're going to click here on this plus button and let's search for our text module. And then finally, we can add our button. Okay, so this is how you add your elements on the page. Now let's take a look and see what happens over here in Etch. All right, so over here, things are a bit different. As you can see, we have a totally different layout. Everything looks so blank. It only comes to life once you start adding elements. So let's start off with our section. So I'm going to add my section here. I'm also going to add a container, and in that container, I'm now going to add my heading. I'm going to add my paragraph text, and I'm also going to add a link. So this link here can be styled to become a button. All right. So the question is now, how do we style, these things? Because as you can see, if I click here on this text here, nothing happens. There's no way for me to go in and start styling it, because over here in Divi, if I click on this, I can now come over here, go into design. I can go to my heading text here and start stylizing it. So I can go here, choose my color. If I have my global colors set, I can go in there and set my global colors. Over here, this is where I can add my size. So let's say this is going to be 3rem. I can just edit like that. And pretty much that is my size. Now over here, Divi has done something different. They've added all these units. So you can go in and add percentage, ems, VW, VH, and so on and so on. So, there's a lot to choose from. Okay. So far, so good. So in the world of Etch, this is what you need to do now. If you click on that, you now need to add a selector. And this is where things get very exciting. So you click here to add the selector. And this is where you can say, okay, this is heading 2. So we can see it's heading 2 by just looking over here. So we're going to say dot heading 2 like that. Okay, hit enter. So now we have the page builder experience over here now on the left. So you may be thinking, well, how do we add the size? So to add the size, you need to make sure you select the right item. So it's typography. And then we have our font size here. Okay. So you can type like how we did it with Divi. So you can say, let's say 50 pixels. Oops. And then you hit enter and you can see that it's updated. Okay. But, and this is very important. In 2025, you can't be adding, pixels or ems and, and stuff like that, because you want your fonts to be, or your typography to be responsive. Okay. It's very, very important for the browser and for usability. So in this case, you want to be adding your clamp values. So over here in the world of Divi, let's say, for example, I select this paragraph text. I'll come over here into design text, and then I would go in and paste my value, and that's my clamp size, and you can see here it's been updated. Okay, great. Now over here you need to have your variables in place. Now this is an advanced workflow, and this is where things get very exciting now. So for my text size here, I can just go in and say dash text, and I think it's text M. Okay, hit enter, and that's my size. And you notice now that I have my variables set in here, variable dash text M. Okay. So in fact, you know what? Let me apply this to the paragraph, because that's where it makes a lot of sense. So to do that, I also need to add a selector. So every single time you want to stylize something, it needs a selector. So I'm going to add my class. So it's dot body. Okay, I'll just call it dot body. Okay, like that. And then we're going to come over here now to typography, and then font size, Then you're going to say dash dash text dash M. Okay, hit enter, and that's going to be my size. Now, I mentioned variables. Okay, in the Divi world, this is your variables manager. So you need to come over here and start adding your variables. So I'm going to click here and I'm going to say text like that. And then I'm going to add my value. So this is going to be my body text. I'm going to hit enter, save, apply. Okay, so great. Now we have our variable. Okay, so we're going to delete that and then we're going to add our paragraph again. So I'm going to go in and say text, and here we go. So here's the thing now. Now that I have my variable, every single time you add your text module, all right, you need to come over here, go to your text, and then you want to come over here to size. So you click here on this little icon here to choose your variables. So you can see here, this is my text variable, the one I've just entered. So I can just do that, and now it has been added. The only challenge that I see with this is once you start adding more variables, you can see this list here can get very, very, very long. Okay. And I think this is something that you have to be aware of. And this is a different workflow if you compare this to Etch, because over here, they also have a style manager. Okay. So this is where you can add your variables first, and it's in a text format, which is very, very clean and very easy. Okay. And then over here now, this is where you have your sizes. So you have your heading 2. So at any point, if you want to go in and stylize this, okay, you can just quickly go in and say, okay, heading 2, font size. Okay, font size. Now with this, you have to know what you're doing. Okay. And then you can say dash dash. Let's say, since this is heading 2, we can say heading dash L, I think. Okay. So now that is my variable that I've just added to heading 2. So I'm going to say confirm. So now when I go back to my site, and by the way, this is body, I can always go in and update this at any point. But the good thing about this is it follows you wherever you go. Meaning, if I come back over here, you see my heading now has changed. And when I click on it, you can see here I have my variable heading L. So I can even go even bigger. I can go XL. Okay. I can even go 2XL. Now, why can I do this? It's because I've set my variables already. So as I'm designing, you'll find that if you get used now to Etch, you are just playing around with this part right here. In the Divi world, if you wanted to make those changes, first of all, you would need to have a long list of all these variables, and this is where you change them. But if you want to update them, you would need to go in and update the whole thing, okay? Because over here, if you want to change the size, there's going to be a massive drop down, because you can see here the clamp sizes are trying to be cramped into one little tiny space. So you're going to have a long list. So then the question is, so what happens now? I mean, is there a way to sort of like get around this? Well, there is also a feature here where you can define a preset. So we can say, select this one here, come over here to the top, and then we're going to say new preset from current styles. And let's just name this body text. Like that. And then we're going to assign it as default and then save preset. Okay. So that's the workaround here. So if I were to delete this and add another, let's say paragraph text, I can just go in here, add my text module, and boom, now it's the same size. But here's the thing. Let's say you have quite a few websites that has this workflow. You would need to have all your presets in some sort of a file where you can export it and then import it onto a different site. But again, there is no workflow, because if I come over here, you can see I can't export all my presets. So there isn't that workflow. Whereas over here, all you need to do is to remember all your variables as you're designing your website. Okay. So for example, here, my paragraph texts, if my variable is like that, I can just say text S, and now it's small. And if I want it extra small, I can just do that. And now it is extra small. And then I can continue stylizing this. So for example, I have my paragraph text here set. I can now go in and add my padding. So let's say 2 rem, for example. And now you can see this has been added around it. If I want to go to my main container, I can select it over here as well. And then I need to set a selector. Now here's the thing. At this point, you're thinking, okay, do I need to add a selector every single time? Not really. So what you can do now, and I really like this about Etch, you can now go in and name all these sections. Okay, so let's say, for example, this section here can be, let's call this hero. And then this container here, we're going to call it main container. And then this div container here, I'm just going to call this container. And then the heading is heading, and then the text here, I think we have a class for it already. Okay, so with that now, you can see here I've named everything. I can right click and then say create BEM classes. So this will automatically pretty much do all my naming for me. So if I click here, you can see now it has a hero __ link. Now I can go in and say padding, and let's say 2 rem, for example, and then I can say background color. So if you don't know what to type in here, this is, this can work really handy, because you got your background here. You can go in and add pretty much anything that you want to add here. Or if you're not sure, you can just come over here and then choose your color, for example, and then now we have our background color. So for my background color, I'm going to say -- and this is going to be primary 500. Oops. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because I remember my variables, okay, from that long list. So this workflow here will allow you to just change this variable, and this color here gets updated across the whole website. So this workflow is pretty cool. Over here, yes, there's also a way of having global updates, because you can come over here and add all your colors over here. And these colors here, if you change it here, it updates the whole website. So the question now is, if you're going to have a massive list of variables, because this file can be very, very long. As you can see here, I just have a basic one here. But imagine now you have all your sizes, your padding, and this can easily become 400, 500, 600 lines of just your variables, right? So this can be very, very tricky. But here's the thing: if you're working now in Etch, now I know Etch and Divi, they're both in alpha. What would make this process much, much easier is if you'd come over here, let's say, for example, to margin, and then you just add your variable, right? If this had sort of like an autocomplete, where it gives you an idea of what your variables are, because it's quite difficult for you to memorize all of them. So if you just type in VAR, and then it just gives you a drop down of pretty much your variables, that would be really cool. Or if you say -- and then you say text, and then the drop down comes down and then says, and then with a text S or text M and so on, that'll be my list of variables, and then I can just select it from the drop down. That will be super awesome. But I know that feature is going to be coming very, very soon. It's still in production. But in terms of workflow, in terms of how these two-page builders approach the design workflow, is totally different. Whereas over here, I would like to say it outputs cleaner code as compared to here, because if a beginner starts using Divi, they may not know that they need to go in here and set all these variables. So what they would do is they will just come straight into the design here, select their module, and then start, making all the changes here. The other thing as well is Divi might end up getting complicated because everything is going to be behind the drop downs. So let's say with the animation here, there's going to be drop downs everywhere. Right now we're waiting for Flexbox. We're also waiting for the loop builder. We're waiting for, what's the other one? The grid. There's going to be a lot of drop downs. So in the end, it might look a bit like Photoshop where everything is hiding behind, behind all these drop downs. For example, spacing. There's a lot, behind spacing here for each and every element. So for example, I'm in text here. This is heading. Every module here is going to have that that drop down. So for example, over here, if I go to design, same thing. I have the list of drop downs. So you can imagine in the end what's going to happen here. So if I'm to compare the two, Divi with time is going to be much harder to use because of these drop downs. But when you get the hang of it, it's easier. But that said, you also have a challenge where the code itself, it might be all over the place unless you know what you're doing. Whereas with Etch, there's no hiding, right? This is your CSS, okay? There is no way to hide from what you have right here. This is how it works, and there's no other way. So it's this way or the highway, basically. So once you master your HTML and your CSS, and by the way, nowadays you can go in and use ChatGPT or Grok or whatever it is. You can just copy your code from there, paste it in here, and pretty much it's good. Now let's try something here. Let's go to ChatGPT. I haven't thought of this, but let's say okay, so I've just asked ChatGPT here for the CSS code. So you can see here it says background color 000. Okay, so that's the CSS code. And here it has named this my section. Okay, so if I was using Divi, all right, I would need to copy this, but I can't use my section because I have to name the item that I am designing or that I'm working on. So I'd copy this, come over here to Divi, and then I would go to, let's say, my section here, go to advanced, custom CSS, module elements, and then I'm going to say main elements and paste it there. You see that? But this is what I would have to do for each and every module if I'm designing this. But if you do it this way and it's not a variable, then everything is going to be manual. Whereas over here, if you set your color, for example, this is our hero, I can just say, okay, I don't know. Okay, it's background, isn't it? So I can just go in here, boom, just like that. That's my color. So as you can see, it's a different approach. Divi does it a certain way. Etch does it a totally different way. The workflows are different. So I think, or I feel like Divi is trying to keep both sides happy. It's trying to keep the newbies happy, and also the advanced designers also happy, because there's now variables and blah 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 that can make this all work properly. But here's the thing: if you use the variables, and this is just what I think, and I know of course it's going to come as a plug because I have a Divify framework called SiteKrafter. Instead of using these variables here, I noticed that, in fact, I don't even use this. I don't really like it at all. So I have my own variables in a file. So what I do if I need to call these variables, by the way, let me just delete that and let's get rid of this. And this was my workaround. Okay, this was my workaround. So let's delete this preset. Which one is it? Okay, this one here. Okay, great. So now that that is deleted, if I now go in here and let's say I add a text module. All right, so there we go. So with this now, I can go in and without using the design tab, I can just go to advanced and then I can do a class-based design workflow. So for example, here I can say padding L, and I've added my padding already. And then if I need to add a background color, I can just say BG, and let's say it's going to be a light gray. I can say gray 100, and you can see I've just added my gray background. And then I can continue on doing this. So let's say I want to change this into a heading. So I can just say heading. Okay, now it's a heading. So I can pretty much define whatever I want to define as I'm designing this. And it doesn't apply to just the text module. I can apply this to pretty much, anything. I can even add, my hover effects. So I can say hover, scale, scale. And you can see now it's scaling on hover. I mean, it would look much better, of course, if I go into preview. Okay, let's just go into preview quickly. And you can see that it is what? It is scaling. So over here, it may look like it's very, very complicated, but once you get the workflow, it can be a very fun environment to work in. So anyway, that was my take on Divi and Etch. I use both page builders and I'm learning both as we go. And if what you see right now leans you more towards Etch, I have a link for Etch. If you like the way Divi does things, I also have a Divi link. Check it out in the video description below. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one. Take care.